Hi, Charles. How you doing?
Good. You?
I'm doing quite well. It's the end of the week.
It is, and that's always a lovely thing, especially in August in Montreal, where it is so nice, you know.
It is.
We've had a few too many heat waves this summer.
Yeah, and it's been not the best air quality recently as well.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I know. It's
These
been crazy.
Forest fires, the jet stream plus the forest fires, it's off.
It doesn't stop, and I think that really segues pretty well into our topic of today.
How?
You know, because we're
How
talking
is
about
that a good segue?
because we're talking about dealing with the cold chain. We're talking about refrigeration, and when I think of air quality, forest fires, all that kind of stuff, might that have an impact? Who knows?
I'd have no idea, but I will say this. So somebody said it would be interesting to just talk about the cold chain in almost a trivial matter, because not a lot of people think about the cold chain, and it's actually a very interesting thing. Let me set the definition for anyone who really doesn't know what we're talking about. The cold chain is the part of the food supply chain where things need to be kept chilled all the way till it gets into the consumer's hands, right?
Yeah, that's correct. And when we're talking about who should actually be participating in that, we got me, that's definitely no expert in the cold chain, and you, that is an expert in the cold chain. So we'll see how that plays out.
It's a bit of a strong statement, but yes, I've had a whole life in the cold chain.
All right. Well, the first topic I think we wanted to quickly discuss, which we both have a bit of knowledge, is the banana process.
This is so much fun. Of course, actually, bananas don't fit in the cold chain. They're if you remember, no, you wouldn't. You're too young. But there's a song about banana. There are many songs about bananas, but one of the songs is "Never put the bananas in the refrigerator," and that's because they will basically ripen so rapidly and die. They just don't survive it. And I know this because I love bananas in the winter, because bananas are my winter fruit, right? Because you can't get any local produce in the wintertime here in Montreal.
True. Yeah.
And when I put it in my bag and I walk to work, by the time I've walked to work, I mean, you can see the damage.
Yeah, you might as well make a banana bread at this point. It's funny that you say you shouldn't put banana in the fridge, because when the banana has actually gone too ripe, you want to put it in a freezer.
You put it in the freezer,
right?
That's at 100%. And they will change color in that freezer.
Yeah, but they'll stay good.
And that's a ripening process. And what is fascinating in the modern supply chain is we have ripening rooms in our distribution centers. And a ripening room is basically like an industrial cave where you could put, I'll make it up, 20 pallets of bananas in there, and we will release ethylene into the room, into the banana room, to help it ripen. Mm-hmm. And there are actually 7 degrees of ripening. Like in our industry, we rank bananas from 1 to 7. Now, I will admit I forget which one's ripe and which one's not ripe, but I'm quite positive 1 is not ripe and 7 is.
It would make sense. The ultimate ripeness.
Yeah, so how many days you have ethylene pumping into the room and triggering the ripening process, or I should say accelerating the ripening process to the stage that you want it to arrive at the grocery store.
So would this be a similar process to, for example, when food manufacturers, they use a thawing room? So when they know what they're going to need to produce, they need to thaw certain ingredients.
Yes, but this is specifically releasing a gas.
Agree, but my question, I guess, is it a prepositioned step to the picking process, or is that done whenever 100%. Bananas come in? Okay.
Well, both. It's not a preposition. No, it's going straight in. The cold chain is a place where inventory turns in a matter of days. Mm-hmm. So there's no, let's put this truckload of bananas into the racking and we'll wait a few weeks and then we're going to ripen it. Okay.
That was a question for someone that doesn't know, right? And that's why we 100%. Said it would be a fun podcast.
The cold chain is a place where inventory turns in a matter of days. So the volume, if you do 10,000 square feet of cooler versus 10,000 square feet of freezer, the throughput volume going through the cooler, is quite literally 10 times the volume as the freezer. That is the nature of the product going through there.
Other quick question
Yeah.
for you. Example, I'm a manufacturer and I'm ordering bananas that aren't ripe and I need to actually bring them in that room.
Yeah.
Would I do that?
You probably, it depends on these rooms are very expensive. Okay. So, and have insurance issues and all sorts of stuff. You probably are not, depending on the volume of bananas, I think your first choice is to insist from the supplier the grade of banana, the level of banana that you want, and not invest in any ripening technology yourself. That's almost 99% of the time. If by chance you're a very small producer and you don't have the power to kind of get that, which even then is a bit of a stretch because banana ripening is a service that's available in every major urban area in North America, then you're going to just let it sit there like we do at home and ripen them. Now, there's so many other interesting things about banana ripening. I think this podcast might become a banana ripening
Could just be a
podcast because now I got more interesting trivia. So,
you said banana ripening as a service.
Yeah.
Just think of that as a thing.
100%.
That's something. So instead of like a 3PL, you could have a.
I had a client that was a food service distributor and had the Dairy Queen, all the Dairy Queen restaurants in their service area. And Dairy Queens are franchise owned, and that meaning that each individual Dairy Queen was owned by an individual, business owner. Maybe a business owner owned 2 or 3 Dairy Queens, whatever. But the point is, those business owners could dictate to this distributor what level of ripening they would get. So imagine that this distributor had to, before they went to pick, had to figure out like who they were shipping to, and make sure that store 1, 2, 3 got like highly ripened bananas, and store 242 got unripened bananas.
So if we think about it from a technological perspective, what that means is that you would actually have inventory condition on your banana ripening. So when you bring in banana, you could say this is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then direct picking against the right banana condition.
So in the distributor's case, no. It's just too small a volume overall. It's just something that they would manually try and do.
Okay.
But if you think of those people who are importers of bananas and distributors of bananas, 100%, right?
Yeah.
And it all has to do with shelf life. So if this distributor was an urban distributor, but with a large rural base. And I'm inventing this. I don't know that this is the way it actually turned out. But what I assumed the picture was, if it's August, Dairy Queen in a suburb, the volume's huge.
Yeah.
Right? Cars, everybody wants their Blizzards and all their whatevers. But if I'm in a rural area, even though my volume's picked up because it's summer, it's still not huge volumes. The number of citizens and consumers in that area is still not enough. And there I might want to have unripened bananas so that, they last longer between deliveries. Whereas the other one, every 2 days, they know they're going through a case of bananas or whatever. That was my assumption. Don't know if that's true or not. But I always thought that was very interesting, this whole banana issue for them.
And it's funny because sometimes when you tell people that for the first time, because I learned about this actually not that long ago, that there was these ripening rooms. And then the first reaction when I told one of my friends that was the case, like, oh, they're manipulating food,
Right.
Or like, that's kind of the first thing that you think.
So that brings us to trivia point number 2 about banana ripening. Banana ripening, this process of pumping ethylene, and everyone's first reaction is, ooh, I hear ethylene. I'm starting to think
seems dangerous.
It's coming out of a refinery in New Orleans or something. Like, what kind of chemical is this? Yeah. But in fact, it is the natural gas that all fruit and vegetables give off in the ripening process.
But banana is much more significant, the amount that they'll give off.
Is that true?
I do believe so. I think
I understand apples to be
yeah,
the
I was going to
worst.
say apples and bananas is what I heard.
It could be. I mean, it's funny, and this is going to segue into point whatever 3 about this whole exciting topic of banana ripening. But let me go with this way. All right. So the ethylene is actually the natural gas that the fruit give off.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not exposing the banana to something unnatural to it. It's actually just it's as if the mental image should be it's as if I've taken this case of bananas and I've surrounded it in a cushion of a billion bananas.
Or apples, if we said
or
the
apples,
new one.
or even the slow releasing onion, Which,
Picture that. You actually define your ripening process by the food that you have
Exactly.
in your backpack.
Well, so then the next thing where the next interesting fact about banana ripening is that we use those rooms to ripen avocados because bananas and avocados are fascinating. Okay. We don't really bother ripening anything else, really. All right. In the industrial process, in the cold chain, even though none of this is
Strawberries,
cold chain.
maybe?
No, we do the opposite.
Okay.
Strawberries. Okay, so let's try and
let's
get to
table strawberries. Yeah,
even
let's
though
parking lot the
really
strawberries
think-
for now. Yeah.
We'll double click on the
Yeah,
strawberries.
let's make sure we just
somewhere else. Yeah.
let's put a sidebar on that.
So, the avocado and the banana. You may have heard this statistic before. It's funny. I was watching a clip of a podcast, like one of those big Joe Rogan type podcasts, and for like 4 minutes they stopped talking about pyramids and how the Anuatu alien people built the pyramids. Like there's actual real facts
Content,
coming
yeah.
out. And it
4
was,
minutes out of a
and it was-
3-hour
it was like-
podcast.
It was like the guest was like, dude, you know what I found out?
Yeah.
And Joe Gross, what, man? And the guest is like, do you know what the number one item in a Walmart is? No, man, what?
Apples.
No, bananas.
Bananas.
Bananas have always been, across all the grocery industry, the number one item. And nobody on earth can walk past a bunch of bananas that are yellow and ready to eat and pass them up. They just put them in the bag.
Impossible.
Put them in the bag. It is and by cubic volume, it's crazy.
And the nice thing about bananas, even if you pass by and you want like 2 that are green, 2 that are yellow, you could just kind of pick and choose. It's tough not to be swayed into buying bananas.
I find that very uncivilized shopping. I think you buy the bunch, you don't mix and match.
Really?
Yeah, I don't. No,
I've seen everyone do it.
I've never done it, but it's a good idea.
We don't go grocery shopping at the same spot, I guess.
No.
Yeah.
I don't go to anarchists' grocery stores. So then avocados, if you think about consumer behavior and you know it from your own consumer behavior, the hardest, most frustrating thing about an avocado is that you either buy it super
never in the sweet
unripe
spot.
or overripe.
Never in
right?
the sweet spot.
Never in the sweet spot.
Yeah.
And so when you come home, like, what is avocado? What do we use avocados for? We salads, avocado toast, and guacamole. Those are your
95%
95%.
guacamole. Yeah.
And I think avocado toast is sort of also taken over. But let's just say with the guacamole, when do you want to eat guacamole? Probably I'm inventing it, on the weekend.
Saturday.
Me, it's guacamole is a Saturday night, Sunday night thing, right?
Yeah.
And you now have to perfectly time the avocado to be ripe.
2-3 days a week.
Yeah.
That's it.
And that's a consumer's biggest hassle. So to deliver near ripe avocados to a grocery store changes the purchasing profile of the avocado because it's a much more popular item.
But that's a really good way to understand cold chain as well, because when I buy the avocado, what I'm going to do is I'm going to right away put it in my fridge. And that way I'm reducing the...
I find that crazy.
Yeah.
Who would put an avocado
I
in
put it in my fridge because once it's ripe, I put it in my fridge and it will stay ripe and not go overly ripe until I actually want to use it. So if you
that's a
think of
good
like
tip.
even
I didn't know that.
consumer...
I never even thought about it.
Consumer cold chain.
And the whole thing that triggered me on the avocados is it was when you're like, bananas give off a lot of ethylene. And I'm like, buddy, I've had 3 avocados in my fruit bowl. It feels like it's on month 5, and they're still rock hard. I've eaten 2 of them this week. One was actually quite ready.
On Saturday?
And today at lunch, no. I'm just eating them to eat them. And today I had one for lunch, and it was like half of like the part by the pit was ripe, and then the top was not. And I've never had that before.
Yeah, it is. It is concerning.
I ate as much as I could.
Yeah.
But we did a project years ago, or I did a project years ago with a grocer in Mexico, and that blew me away because that grocer in Mexico, this is back to that consumer behavior around ripe and unripe. That grocer, first of all, avocados were like 20% of the whole product section. It was crazy.
As it should.
Okay, but the piles there were 2 piles, ripe and unripe.
Huh.
That's how they retail avocados. Ready for tonight, ready in a few days.
But that's really what you care about. That's the first question you ask yourself when you go.
It would be amazing if we did that. That would change avocado consumption. The interesting thing, so I think I got through all my banana ripening points.
Yeah, and avocado ripening.
And some on the avocado ripening.
Yeah, 3 main points that we got out of this.
We brought up the apples. Yeah. So the hometown hack is, if you want to lose your fruit fast, put it in with the apples.
Yeah, then you know that. Or if you want your bananas to ripen faster, you put in with your apples.
If I do that, and if they're brown the next day,
they're done. But if you want your avocados to stay ripe and not go overly ripe until Saturday comes, you put in the fridge.
You brought up strawberries and the ripening of strawberries. We harvest strawberries ripe. Okay. And
that's true. I already harvested strawberries.
Sorry?
I already harvested strawberries as a job. I should have remembered that.
Okay, good. Well, we harvest strawberries ripe. And we do the reverse. We engineer a reverse ripening miracle in our cold supply chain. So we'll harvest, let's say you harvest strawberries in somewhere like Ventura County, California. You have a 2-hour window to get those strawberries down to temperature. And by down to temperature, we mean 36 degrees Fahrenheit for the Americans, call it 4 degrees Celsius for the Canadians. You're taking all the heat you possibly can in ideally a 1-hour period, packing them chilled, and then the rest of the supply chain for strawberries is keeping on the trucks those strawberries at that temperature for the thousands and thousands of kilometers that they travel through the distribution centers, back onto outbound trucks from the centers to the stores, and then in the stores, keeping them at that temperature. At that point, you can let them start to ripen again because ideally people are buying them quickly. But it's the opposite of a ripening process. In fact, like when you think of the bananas, one of the things I forgot to tell you that's interesting.
Point number 4 for all
let's say point number 4 was we actually, there are banana ripening trucks. So
that was actually one of the questions I had. Like, why not ripen
while you roll?
Yeah, while you're actually rolling.
Down the
might as well.
I got my banana.
You got nothing else ripening. Doing? You might as well ripe your bananas.
The argument against it is inside a distribution center, it's a controlled environment. And by control, like truck breaks down, whatever.
Yeah.
I think there are supply chains that are still rolling with these banana ripening rooms. They still exist.
Yeah. Because you have to have special trucks, right?
But
so it makes logistics a little more complicated if you want to do that.
100%. Sure. It's a dedicated banana truck, right? But if you're Kroger in the U.S. or Loblaws in Canada, the number of trucks currently on the highway, like currently right as we speak, with bananas in the Kroger alone supply chain.
Significant.
You're talking about a critical mass of, I don't know, I wouldn't make it up, but if you said to me there are 1,000 trailers of bananas on the road right now for Kroger, I'd say, yeah, that's probably right.
Yeah, it doesn't seem crazy.
No.
Because that would only be, 24,000 ballots of bananas running around.
Yeah.
Not crazy.
No. Anyway, my thought is we really didn't talk about the cold chain today.
Well, we did, because we talked about it from several different aspects. We talked about bananas. We talked about strawberries, how they're reversed to bananas.
We barely squeezed the strawberries in. And it's really the counterpoint against banana ripening.
Which is important.
This has been a 100% banana ripening.
We also quickly touched on the avocado and gave a quick tip to our auditors at
Again,
at
this
home.
is all about ripening.
Yeah, and it's all about making your lives easier.
I have no interest in going further than this. I think we went
captured
bananas for bananas.
We really captured the essence of it.
Who knew that this was going to
be such an exciting podcast about bananas?
This probably is going to be our biggest podcast yet in terms of going viral.
If anyone wants a sequel on any other fruit of the cold chain, we'll happily do so.
Stay tuned.
But bananas is probably the biggest one.
And look, I really want to talk about scromboid, which is something I suffer.
Yeah.
So,
but unfortunately, it'll be for another Friday.
Hold that for another Friday.
Yeah. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.